Thank God.
January 28th, 2013, the agenda says 2012, meeting of the Sewer Authority Board of Directors to order. Roll call, please.
Director Kowalczyk,
Here.
Director Alfano,
Here.
Chair Warren, Vice Chair Harvey, Director Boyd,
Here.
Director Clark.
Here.
Item 1, roll call for the allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2, public comment or communications. Does anyone have any comments for items not on the agenda? Directors? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to special order of the day, item A, plaque in memoriam of John Wade Jr.
Directors, as you know, one of our operators was killed during the year. He was a local guy who grew up around here, and I think was a pretty special guy. The staff has decided that we wanted to remember him in the future, and so we've had a plaque made to mount on the wall here so that he will, that anyone who comes after we're gone will know that John was here and that John was an important person to us. Happy to pass it around.
Is there anyone from the family to receive?
His daughter could not be here tonight.
I didn't realize how young he was, 1993.
That's when he started here.
Ah.
That's his tenure. We will rob the cradle, but not.
It's a nice honor.
And the other item, we have an operator that works for us who is important to the wastewater industry and is just now leaving his position as the president of the Santa Clara Valley section of the California Water Environment Association. Tim Costello. So this is the CWEA sending Tim along his way, but I thought we'd share that with you because it's important that one of the things that Tim and the other operators that belong to the CWEA, they bring back information and good connections to the industry in ways that are valuable to us, and so we support to some extent Tim's activities and want to congratulate him on being the past president.
Thank you, sir. Hold it up for the camera. Cheesy smile.
It's an interesting plaque. I haven't seen one before with a hammer on it.
I can pass it around if you like.
It could have a wrench or a.
Did you actually use a gavel at the meeting?
No, well, I would have liked to a couple of times. I did not.
Okay, well, that's coming around. Item 3, and let me say congratulations from the SAM board.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks for everything you do here. Item 3, consent agenda.
Through the chair, I'd like to pull A, C, and E, please.
A, C, E. Any others, or is there a motion? I was gonna put 2 out of those 3.
There we go. Like mine. Great.
Is there a motion for items B1, B2, and D?
So moved. Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And you vote?
may I, before you, pass this back along to Mr. Costello?
You can just give it
Oh.
to Susie if you want this one.
Thank you. So I pulled item A, I want to provide a comment. Let me find my comment in my notes here. There is item A5, old business, I believe that was the item. It makes reference to, the item we reviewed made reference to the member agency managers having consensus. And I just want to make clear that we did not get accurate direction from the general manager on that item. There was not consensus on the budget allocation approach from the member agency managers, and that affected my decision on hearing that. So I want to just make clear that the item, it was SAM flow metering and management, agenda item number 5A, that included a reference to moving from a 3-year average to a 1-year average for budget allocations. And I was told during that meeting that we had consensus from the member agency managers, and that was not the case. And I'm just noting that for the record, that's already, we've taken a vote on this, but there's not much I can do with that at this point.
Are the minutes incorrect as written, or you just want?
I need to add this comment because it affected the vote. Let me review the minutes to make sure.
I mean, you just want something noted in this meeting's minutes to indicate what you just described?
That would be sufficient.
Because I think the minutes as printed need to reflect what actually happened at the meeting, so you can put a note in this month's meeting indicating that you don't think that your vote was based on complete information at the previous meeting.
That's sufficient. My vote was not based on accurate information.
Okay, so let's kind of
Could-
go that way.
Through the chair, can you, it is my distinct impression and understanding that everybody at that meeting wanted to go back to a 1-year average. That's my understanding, and if no member agency manager has said to me that I was incorrect in this. This is the first time I'm hearing about it, so I'm curious, what was the position of your manager in this case?
There was not consensus on that topic, and she didn't think that you had reached consensus on that topic. And I think for additional specific, I know the meeting notes that I reviewed for that didn't reflect that from Half Moon Bay, and I think at this point it's probably best for you to circle back to the Half Moon Bay city manager for clarification.
My understanding was that all 3 managers were interested in going back to the 1-year average and not the 3-year average.
So then there's a cross word, because that's not the case. Okay, so I would recommend you review that with Laura Snyder.
Well, if it's an issue of consensus, then we'll note that we have 2 other managers to consult with.
Certainly.
Well, let me say, I reflected what I accurately reflected what I understood from the meeting, and we'll have to look into the disagreement, because that's the way I understood the only thing we didn't have consensus on in that group I mentioned in the calendar item, which was how to deal with Frenchman's Creek.
So, well, my takeaway is this. My takeaway is that I'll have to more carefully consider the topics as they're discussed in this group, and if I have to pause and review back to our city manager, then we'll have to do that, and it may take a little longer sometimes, but I can't let things sit at face value, because that was a big piece of input that wasn't accurately reflected. And like I said, it influenced my decision significantly.
This is precisely one of the things that one of the reasons why I have not been that terribly interested in having the board discussion and decision be too much driven by consensus or not from the agency managers. The responsibility rests here with us at this board, and we each have our managers to work with. If they can achieve consensus and our managers convey to us things along those lines, I'm certainly very interested in hearing what our managers have to say. But the notion that
the committee of the managers be used to guide this board just seems contrary to what our responsibilities here are, and this kind of situation is easily anticipatable as a likely outcome from time to time. Based on representations, I think that what I am going to be basing most of mine on are the direct discussions I have with the various staff members, general manager or others who need to feed into what we, the representatives for our agency, bring to this table. So this is precisely the kind of thing, whether it be the classic loss of information as things are communicated through multiple people, or people changing their minds, or whatever. I'm much more interested in hearing directly from some of the people that I count on. As I
So,
bring it to the
that's a
table.
good point, Scott, and I concur with that. I think it does carry weight if items come before us where there is consensus that for what we have professional executives, management that operates our city, your districts have professional management, and their input carries a lot of weight. So when there's consensus across the board, that's valuable to me. But your point's well taken also. That's all I have on that topic.
I do have a correction to these minutes. Interesting that neither of the Montero directors held this for discussion. The comment on adjournment with the name of Montero district is incorrect. Can we get that corrected? Do we want to take these for approval one at a time as we go through the three items that were held for discussion?
Move to approve item A from the consent agenda.
That's both sets of minutes?
Yes.
Minutes with your correction?
Yeah, with the correction that I mentioned.
Yeah. Good.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, item C, disbursements.
Thanks, sir. So I asked item C be pulled. I have a couple of questions. Just a general question is regarding the items. I'm curious. There's an item that's Palo Alto Hardware. I'm assuming that's something on the coast that's just built for Palo Alto Hardware?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ocean Shore.
Ocean, that's what I thought. Great, thank you.
Anybody else?
Lucky guy. And we get a charge for the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office every month, and I'm curious what that is for.
It's a personal matter. I'd be happy to share it
Good.
outside of the public.
Understood, thank you, sir. And there's an item for a copier rental. I think we're paying, so it's like $500 a month or something for a copier rental. And that just made me want to ask the question, how regularly are the items that recurring fees, recurring charges reviewed for appropriateness? At, what is that, 5 cents a copy, if that was, that's thousands of copies, right? So how often do you evaluate the items that are recurring charges on our budgets?
That copier is, we actually have a new copier. And we reviewed it at the time we got the new copier. Annually, when we put the budgets together, we put our justifications together, look at what the costs are. And in the case with the previous copier, we owned it. And this one, we're leasing it. So we looked at purchasing a new one versus leasing one as recently as 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
Okay.
How old was the previous copier, which I think we paid something like $10,000 for?
I don't know the age of it.
5 years, 4 or 5 years? It's 5.
Yeah, 4 years.
We believe it has some salvage value, and we have not tried to salvage it yet by selling our interest in it.
Okay, I'm not sure why we only got 5 years out of it. It seemed to be a pretty high-end copier, but let's move on. Director Paul, anything else on?
Yep, I do. So in addition to, so we have an item later on the agenda, which is under new business, so in addition to the wet weather flow project, are there any items under the disbursements that could be collectively grouped together under a single budget category?
A single budget
For
category?
example, there are a number of items that all could fall under wet weather flow project. I see all the individual items and look at.
Got it. I have a list of all the items, all the checks. The chair asked for this today, and I will say we put it together with the best of intention in a short period of time, but this lists all of the checks, and all of these checks are charged against the wet weather flow facility.
I'm sorry, I meant, I know we have a separate item on that. I meant, are there any other budgeted projects, other projects that all individual items might add up into? In addition, aside from the wet weather flow.
Okay, the project, that's a term that's difficult to, we don't use the term project here unless it's something new. You're talking about another budget object?
Yes.
These are the charges against the wet weather facility.
Are you talking about the counts that are listed on each of the line items?
So, well, perhaps I am. So, for example, I want to make sure, I want to understand that there are not, there may be the accounts, that there aren't a lot of individual items that might collectively add up to a large sum,
If you're speaking of the dedication, all that's,
aside from the dedication.
This is the warrant list. So on each of these checks, any check, every check has one or more accounts on the line item detail. So this is not the place where those are rolled up into budgetary totals.
Got it.
But it can be extracted from this, all that detail is present in this, but this is just the warrant list.
So then, thank you, that's helpful.
Director Kowalczyk, if you go to page 8, the Palo Alto hardware is broken down into page 8 of the warrant list. You can look at Palo Alto hardware and you can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 10 items and they're charged against different accounts. And you can see the accounts to the right and what they're charged for.
Got it.
And we break them down that way every time. In fact, each warrant that you have in front of you will have that detail on it.
Got it, and then, that's helpful, thank you. And then my last thing is, there is an item for, is it Calcon? It's a large item referenced here. I don't know what Calcon is.
Tony, you want to explain what
They're
that
our instrumentation vendor.
Okay, and so we have a purchasing policy with a hurdle of $30,000 for getting competitive pricing. And this item listed here, there's, I think, $40,000 worth of expenditures with Calcon. And I want to know if Sam Management went out and got competitive bids for that, or did an RFP?
We didn't, but this is a bunch of jobs, and some of it's actually passed through costs. Is it the same job, so I'll explain that.
I don't know, I don't understand that.
Pass-through costs is if we do work on your pump station, we pay the bill and then bill you for it. So that wouldn't be,
So this
as
is
one, this is a number of
where there's
jobs.
lots of small items adding up to a very large sum?
Yes.
But in pass-through, these are not SAM costs. These are things that the member agencies are paying, and we'll receive a separate detailed billing for it. That's what it means by pass-through to the agency.
But these are, the pass-through to the agencies, but these are the decisions of SAM that if we need to buy pumps or something like that, all these items, that if these things are required and you go get them, right? And then we have them, then they're billed to the member agencies.
Yes. If it was a pump, we'd talk to you about it first.
Right, and so that was some $40,000.
Well, some of that is SAM, some of that's member agencies. I don't have the bill to show you the breakdown.
So, but in the month of December, we spent $40,000 with one company.
On how many different events, Tony, do you think it was?
I'm not sure. I see, there was one job here that we did in the plant that was fairly large.
Who's got the Calcon stack?
There's 22. Oh, yeah, but it'll break it down. There it is. That's 22.
Yes. So with this, we have
Which depends on what month he's talking about.
As a matter of fact, the authority has been using California for as long as I've been on this board. And so maybe slightly different version of your question would be, have we evaluated whether it makes sense to continue with California versus looking around?
They may be great, I don't know,
Yeah.
but for paying $40,000 in a single month to one company, that bears scrutiny.
Well, somebody, and I'm guessing one of you guys has the stack.
Well, I look to the general manager to respond to
It looks
this.
like these are
Well, but
in alphabetical order split, so I have a range of
the
which
detail
version
is
is C.
sitting here,
Does not see or-
a lot of detail is with the check. And I've looked and it's not in my staff.
I thought the case.
Well, at least from what I see on here, the Montero Pump Station, the Half Moon Bay Lift Station, and the Montero Lift Station, there were three visits there, and the repair to, do you know what the repair to the plant was, Tony? Or was it,
Underground conduit,
and was it a one job or a
It turned out to get bigger as we did it, and we couldn't just relay the conduit. We ended up putting the conduit above ground so that it wouldn't happen, because we kept finding broken spots in it.
And what, I mean, what do we anticipate? So it's $34,000, so what was it anticipated to cost?
I don't remember the original, I think it was like, I can't say,
Okay.
I have to look it up.
My point being that we're spending a significant amount of money with a single vendor, and that bears scrutiny to make sure that we're spending our money, or member agency's money, wisely. And I think we see this is a large sum, and I think it bears scrutiny, and any item, whether it's a $500 copier or a $40,000 series of purchases from a single vendor, we need to do that efficiently. It's not our money that we're spending. It's it's the money from the community, and we need to be thoughtful about that. And I'm a little concerned that this is such a large amount, and it's maybe they're a great vendor, but I think items like this, if we're going out on a regular basis, we gotta look at that carefully.
Since you're encouraging scrutiny, allow me. So every month, the directors get a stack of checks. We tend to split them up and kind of distribute them around. That's one way of doing it. We've done it other ways. Sometimes we've given it to a couple of people and they go through all of them. At Montero, typically it's 2 people go through them all. Bob and Jim will go through 2 stacks, for the 2 different divisions that we have.
And CCWD, they have one director come in earlier on meeting day and go through the whole.
But no check gets signed without the director being one of those signatures. Sometimes just one of those with the general manager, or sometimes 2 of those without the general manager. So that's part of how that works. And before we affix our signatures to these things, that due diligence, some of that falls to the directors who actually affix their signature. This came from your staff.
I would think none of that would fall to our responsibility.
Then don't sign it.
Well,
Then
trust
don't
me.
sign it.
Well, trust me, I won't, because if it comes to this board,
So
it needs to have gone through
if
our
I
management.
could finish.
Yeah, can we not?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, CalCon is used for a variety of things. We tend to cut them one check. Perhaps what we ought to do is cut them individual checks. But, so what we've got, I see things here, job site main plant, 68 hours of labor, 600 miles, 1 lot miscellaneous parts, and a flexing rental. 10 hours labor and travel, quarterly flow calibrations, perform flow calibrations at blah blah, the big long set of details. 10 more hours, quarterly flow calibrations, again, a lot more detail about where and what. 12 hours of labor and travel, worked on motor inventory list and completed. 8 hours of labor and travel. And just so you know, when I go through CalCon, I do this, I flip through and I read every page. this is getting some scrutiny and has for a very long time. This isn't anything new, and the fact that you're not familiar with some of this process concerns me.
Well, that's ridiculous. Of course I'm familiar with the process.
So why are we acting as if we
My
don't know
point,
how this
my
works?
point is this, I'm not acting like I don't know how to sign a check, Scott. What I'm saying is we're spending $40,000 in a single month with a vendor, and I wanna know that our general manager is looking at it and scrutinizing it. I wanna know that our general manager is looking at that and saying, is that the best use of our dollars? Is there another vendor? I wanna know that we're on top of it. That's my point.
And over the course of the past while, we've been signing one of these every month. And this level of detail has been coming in front of the board
I'm digging
every
deeper,
single
Scott.
month. I hear that.
Let me make a
More labor
suggestion.
and travel.
Scott, let me make a
Work on a
suggestion.
new pipe, I'll finish and then I'll be happy to relate this.
I'm not sure we need to
Work
go
on
into
new pipe.
detail on every one of the inputs.
Well, you know, every director is entitled to their opinion on what level of scrutiny and detail is appropriate. And I'll just beg your indulgence here for a minute, since we're having a long-standing amount of detail that has come before this board and received scrutiny and signatures every single month for as long as I can remember, being treated as if somehow this is some new kind of tragedy going on that requires a whole new level of scrutiny. And frankly, I think it's quite a show, and I don't appreciate it. And Rick, watch for the rest of the meeting. See if I'm wrong. I hope I am. Pipe straps. Chemical pump panel was tripping, so someone came out to work on that. Delivered new motors ordered by the customer. Installed fittings. Whatever projects on site with Tony.
We understand you can read an invoice. Let me
Oh,
make a
no.
suggestion. Let me make a
Excuse
suggestion.
me.
Let me make a
Chair.
suggestion, Scott.
If you would please.
Let me make a suggestion. These come in front of us every meeting. So we are to scrutinize these while the meeting's
Excuse me.
going on. Hang on.
Excuse me.
These are to be scrutinized while the meeting's going on, right? That's the way we do this. Let me make a suggestion. Give these to us electronically prior to the meeting so we can all look through these. And then we come to the meeting, we could already have questions prepared as opposed to trying to do this while the meeting's ongoing. Is that a good idea?
We'd be happy to discuss it.
Okay.
Now, the notion that $40,000 on this is somehow outrageous and maybe
I
too
didn't say it
much
was
in one
outrageous.
pot.
I did not say it was outrageous.
Can we do one director at a time, please? Seriously.
I can try.
Page after page,
I'm trying.
page after page of detail of where the time and the money went. I don't think there's any real big mystery for anybody who wants to take what's sitting in front of them and page through it. And frankly, this notion that somehow we've got something nefarious going on, or some lack of scrutiny and lack of proper attention to detail, ignores the very obvious fact that this was sitting right in front of you, and this has been in front of all of us every single month that you've been here. This isn't new. But the act that somehow, wow, we've discovered, some major thing, it's like, no, that's not at all right.
So you're taking me entirely incorrectly. I'm saying there's a $40,000 expenditure. It's a large sum. I didn't imply impropriety. I did not say it was inappropriate. I did not say it was too much. It might be too little. It might be the best deal in America. I don't know. But it's a $40,000 sum, and my question is, and my point is, that I expect SAM management to make sure that that is the best use of that $40,000, that that vendor is providing the best services. So if we've been using them, that's our go-to for the last few years, that's great. I think it's as a matter of purchasing protocol, to look into those things and be thoughtful about all those vendors. Is that the right choice? Is this can we do a contract with different vendors, or do an RFP or RFQ to make sure we're getting the best value? That's my point.
Well, I think perhaps I misread it, but I could have sworn I heard a pretty darn accusatory tone in the manner in which you were questioning the manager. And frankly, for something where all the detail is sitting right in front of you, and this is not new, the tone seemed inappropriate, and I think we can approach this in a slightly different approach.
And also, I'd like to make a comment, based on your Half Moon Bay article that was published in the Half Moon Bay Review, this could be a long night if we continue on this route.
Yeah.
We could go on, we could be here till 2 o'clock in the morning, based upon your Half Moon Bay article, which I wanted to address later in the meeting.
Right, Leonard?
Director Alfano.
Oh, I'd like to see things get moving here.
Okay, I wonder if we should have an agenda item for the next regular meeting to discuss the process and see if we want to make changes to it, you know, either potentially look at the CCWD model or request that all of this be scanned and distributed, you know, let's have an agenda item to discuss, do we want
To discuss the,
do we want to change the process for the
got it.
processing the warrant by the board? Okay, so we'll move on to the last one that was held from consent agenda, item 3E. We're okay moving on here. All right. 3E.
Let me catch up on my notes real quick. So this is for the training for our new mechanic,
Yes.
and I'm just curious, was there not an opportunity to provide the training, provide overlap prior to the retirement?
No. Jim retired in August, was it?
I think so,
And we recruited and replaced him, and we think it's actually we in December there was a great deal of overtime work on a sewer break, and the other mechanic, we have two of them, you know, spent a great deal of time and frankly was getting pretty burned out. And to have him be in a circumstance where he would be doing his own work and training somebody, I feel that the best thing to do would be to get Jim, who lives in the area, to work with this young fellow for a few hours to get him oriented to the system and to get him up and running fast. We've got a lot of salary savings because Jim's been gone since August. In terms of overlap, that, you know, we did not plan to overlap the two employees. They would have been two full-time employees, and that would not have been the way I would have done it. And we also didn't know, in fact, one of the people we were looking to hire had experience in the water business. He went to CCWD. This person his mechanical skills are more automotive, and so we're having to orient him. It's not exactly the same. And like every business, it's a little bit different when you bring somebody into a new business. So I feel this is the best way to get him oriented to our circumstance and do it in a way that keeps the productivity of our other mechanic up where it ought to be.
Thank you. Some more questions?
I actually was also going to hold this for similar reasons. I guess I have multiple related questions on this. Why didn't we hire somebody who had the experience?
We recruited, we had 40 or 50 people. We narrowed it down. We interviewed 6.
Well, we didn't make it to 6, I think we interviewed 4.
Yeah, I think recruiting on the coast here for specialty folks is difficult. It's a high cost of living area. It's if people don't live here, they commute here. We look to, in fact, one of the people we were looking at lived in Pescadero, and we thought, hey, we found one, but he went, like I say, he went to CCWD to work there, and we had lots of people apply for the jobs, but very few of them were qualified, and very few of them had experience in the wastewater business.
I'm still not clear on why you didn't hire one of the qualified people.
There were no, this was the.
Very few of them were qualified.
That's right. This was.
None of them had the
none of them.
appropriate experience?
One of them had water experience. We tried to hire him, and he went to work for CCWD. No, none of the other people, am I right, Tony? None of the other people had any.
That's right.
Had water or wastewater experience. And they were qualified as entry-level mechanics because of their mechanic background, but in terms of them being qualified to ultimately, we ultimately try and certify them as a wastewater maintenance specialist. They will have to learn that trade here.
Okay. you have a not to exceed amount there, and I didn't pull up the calculator. How many hours is that at $38 an hour?
It's the equivalent of 3 months,
3 months full time?
roughly. I don't know if it'll be full-time. I think it'll be somewhat less than that, but.
It's good.
And the salary savings is, Jim's salary has not been paid for 5 months, so there will ultimately be a saving to Sam, even overlapping him in this circumstance. He's what is called, CalPERS is called a retired annuitant, so he gets no benefits, and in fact, is limited to working only 900 and something hours in a year. If we wanted him back full-time, he could only work 6 months in a year, but we only want him, a few hours a week to get this young man oriented toward what we're doing here and take some pressure off of our other mechanic.
So do you expect that, are you hoping and expecting that the actual will come in at substantially less than the not to exceed amount?
Depends on how his training goes. I mean, we have not begun this. I brought it to the board because it is it's a new position, and wanted you to know what we were doing in this circumstance. We'll have to see how it goes. If the kid catches on quickly and could go faster, but it was a pretty modest number that we came up with in terms of training him, in terms of looking at the number of hours a week and the not to exceed cost.
Okay, anything else, or is there a motion?
A motion to,
To approve 3E?
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
Sure.
No, it's a form. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Item 4 is no old business. Item 5A, report the board on road floor management project, WWFMP dedication ceremony. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I've been asked to provide a detailed accounting of the dedication that we held for the WWFMP on November 16th. So I want to, there's certainly been a lot of talk about it, definitely want to get to my thinking and how this was put together and what we were attempting to do, and I think what we did accomplish. One of the things that is important to note is that this was a very special project for a number of reasons. It's been a while in the making. It's a project that has a number of aspects to it that make it an impressive project as these kinds of things go. It isn't a huge project, but its character in that it's a green project, in the sense that it protects the environment in a passive way, I think was an important piece. It was important that this project, which was funded by 2 utilities without state or federal funding, is without a regulatory mandate to have to do it, I think is important in its design and construction. Interestingly, it's a very local project in the sense that it is, we dubbed it local money protecting local beaches. Most of the money spent on it, in the high 70–80%, maybe even higher, went to local businesses. One of the things that is probably worth a short digression here is talking about utility branding. It's something that is, when I was general manager in San Francisco, I had one press liaison, her job was to talk about what the San Francisco Public Utilities had not thought about, had screwed up, or needed to account for on any given day. Currently now, San Francisco has a staff in excess of 30 to manage their public information. And you say, well, what does the utility that's a monopoly need to have public information, or why does it need to have a brand? There's a great deal of discussion about it, a great deal of interest in it, and it's. I did include a wastewater publication called "Building a Wastewater Utility Brand," so that people could see that this is something that is in other jurisdictions a serious way of doing business, and something that I felt we had the right project at the right time with the right profile to use that to get the message out that Sam that Sam was here and Sam was doing stuff that was good and appropriate for the environment and good and appropriate for its ratepayers. There's a number of things that we say one of the frustrating things about the wastewater business is that good performance, as we have here, no violations of the discharge standards for years. The good news is we've had no violations of the discharge standards for years. The bad news is that that's not something that people write about. The fact that our beaches often are mostly A and A+ rated beaches for health reasons and for safety, the surfers know that, but not many other people know that. So the good news about doing your job well is the job's done well. The bad news is that there's really no way to have your customers really know what you've accomplished. This was an opportunity, I thought, to engage in across an array of areas to look at have people look at Sam's reputation and revitalize it to some extent. 6 years ago, Sam had a 30th anniversary, which did a lot of that. Celebrated 30 years, brought a lot of people together. It was a well-attended event, and got Sam some recognition on the coast side. We didn't have a 35th anniversary, and frankly, just from what I've heard from talking to the various folks around here, Sam was, in my mind, kind of slipping back into the out of sight, out of mind, and the derisive term of flush and forget, that people weren't thinking, hey, what's Sam doing over there? Our coming out was cutting down 2 trees in front so you could see us from the highway, but I thought we needed more of the WWFMP project. Had a pretty big outreach component to it at the beginning. We had, because of its location, it's between a couple of a daycare center and a grammar school. It's in a very visible area with a lot of activities going on. We put a lot of effort at the front end of this thing of, number one, doing public information to be sure that people knew what we were doing, and that people were aware of how we were going to impact their lives. I think we all remember the Coronado Street leak repair that gummed up traffic for miles in both directions. We put a lot of effort in there to make sure that people knew what we were doing, and that we would not impact the folks of El Granada any more than we had to. Early in the process, I talked to a number of board members, and we talked about, would we have a groundbreaking, and the golden shovel kind of thing, where everybody gets together, puts a hard hat on, and turns a shovel full of dirt over. And I think the consensus was that a later event I described as a manhole cover pulling was more to people's liking. So we went forward with that. I have a very strong sense that one of the things that is difficult about this business, if not wrong with this business, is that that people do not value infrastructure that they can't see and they don't see. And I think that that's pretty evident in the way people deal with it. My story that the teachable moment for me was many years ago when I was at an EPA meeting in Washington, and I had the mayor of Gloucester, Massachusetts, was unhappy with me because I suggested that all his interest in cutting the ribbon in front of a pump station that had a plaque with his name on it, if he would put that kind of energy into cutting a ribbon over an 8-inch sewer, that infrastructure issues would progress better and do better, and he was not happy about that. But that pressed into my mind is that buried infrastructure needs to be celebrated. This was a great example of it. We had lots of visuals. We had a lovely site. The whole history of it was useful. So I pushed ahead, put together. I brought in Susan Danielson-Senning, who has done a lot of work for SAM over the years. Put together the Water Summit in 2005, helped implement the Sewer Science Program, directed the 30th anniversary celebration in 2006, and has been responsible for putting together our clean water monitor from the past. Her rates were definitely competitive, and we had her, in addition to doing the outreach on the project itself, I asked her to look at putting together a celebration for this project, and so she did, and extended some of the work she was doing on the project. A lot of the work on the project actually can be multi-purposed in the sense that the graphics, those were developed. They can be used for, and they were used for the original site. They were used for the program, for the dedication, and they're actually being used in subsequent SAM educational materials. It was the graphic, I think, has received a lot of positive comments from not only the picture itself, but the sentiment. So we had Susan put together a plan. The plan was to target those officials who, number one, would be interested in this. Number two, political leaders, since we didn't get money for this. We asked for money, didn't get it. To go to those offices of those leaders and let them know that we're ready to build. That we're in a circumstance where small utilities often don't get high in the SRF, the state revolving fund queues, because the perception is they can't deliver. I wanted to make sure that we made the point of saying we delivered, and here it is. We also wanted the regulatory agencies to know that we were willing to move farther than we had to, because a lot of the enforcement issues often come down to credibility of the agency, and I think that this wanted to be sure that the regulatory agencies knew that we had done this, and in fact we got calls. Tony and I each got calls from people at the regional board saying, "You did this, and we didn't give you any money," and they were stunned that we had done that without them giving us money. It's also important to the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations that watch the health of the bay. So we wanted to be sure that they were there and got to participate in that. It was also an event aimed at getting locals there to look and see what we've done. We sent out 270 invitations. The invitations had a dual purpose. One was to say, hey, come to our party, and two, they said, hey, this is what we've done here. So we felt they were, for those people who couldn't come, they were certainly invited and had information that they could use in terms of actually the postcards are in the packet for your review. One of the things that I think one of the difficulties in putting this together was we had just gone through a serious staff decline with a combination of 2 retirements and a death. We went from a staff of 14 to a staff of 11 in a 3-month period. Pretty significant. We did not have extra hands to do some of the logistical work on this project. So that was a factor in how we went forward with this, and had Susan do more of the work than we otherwise might have. I know that for the 30th anniversary, we actually hired a temp to do that for some period of time in that process. We did not do that in this case. We had Project Blueprint handle the development of the guest list. She coordinated with directors to be sure that we got the net cast as far and as appropriately as we could to get people there to the celebration. The results, I think, there's a separate piece in here on the results, but the results were good. I think we had 70 people show up on a rainy, windy day. A lot of smiles on people's faces. I had people comment that the event was well done and very educational, and I think we had a turnout of congressperson staff, state senator staff, two assembly persons, supervisor's office. I think there were more than that, but I don't probably remember offhand. So we had a pretty good show of political might, and I think we felt successful in terms of getting our message out. We got front page coverage of the event, and again, it was a well-received event, and it's certainly post event. The issue of cost and the issue of value, I think if you say $24,000 for a ribbon cutting ceremony, absent the situation and absent the work that went into this, I can see why people go, what are you talking about? But we went at this in a methodical fashion. It was complicated in certain instances by the site itself, complicated by the weather and the potential for rain and wind, and we adapted to it and got it pulled off. And I think that I'd close my comments with that I don't know what its value is yet. I think the value is in what it produces down the road for Sam, in terms of subtleties, in terms of regulators not enforcing on a minor detail, or an NGO coming to us and talking to us before they go complain to the regulator about something they perceive we're doing wrong. Those things are, those are the values, improving our chances of getting grants. Those are values that I think we will not be able to assess. It's too early to assess them. They will come in the future. So anyway, it was an attempt by me to brand this utility as a can-do, forward-looking, environmentally conscious organization that was trying to do the right thing, and that's, you know, I think we accomplished what we set out to do in terms of the individual accomplishments within the celebration. And now the question remains, you know, how does that work in the aftermath? And I think that's what we're here about.
Yeah, I'd like to, through the chair, thank you, Leonard. I appreciate this issue being brought to the board, but I'd like to make a comment that there's no rule to this effect. There's no rule. But I believe it's common courtesy for board members to submit SAM policy issues to fellow board members instead of first submitting those issues to the local newspaper for publications. There's no rule, but if there's an issue, it could be brought to the board. It could be brought to board members individually, or one other board member, or to the whole board without breaking the Brown Act. I think that reaching the issue in the front page of the review was just a shock to me, and I think it was very discourteous. And I'd further like to comment that, well, I should have the floor, that, you know, remember the project protects Half Moon Bay beaches. It allows Half Moon Bay during wet weather events, happen 3 or 4 times a year. It allows Half Moon Bay to use 80% and more of the plant capacity, while the other districts keep theirs in storage. You know, it's a direct benefit, and but my main issue is the courtesies. Whatever else happens, I just want to make that point to the fellow board members.
To the chair, Jim, if I may just be frank, I really have a lot of respect for you, and I appreciate your comments, and I take them to heart. I hear what you say, and in responding to questions that ended up in a review article, it went very public, very public. But I appreciate what you had to say and the way you shared that information. So thank you.
I know the Half Moon Bay Review, when they call you, I got a call a couple of days ago. He said, off the record, what are your thoughts?
There's no such thing with the newspaper.
That's what this person said. He said, off the record, what are your thoughts about this issue? I said, I have no thoughts to share with you. Thank you, Rick, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I would like to add a couple things to the manager's report. This was a proactive project, meaning we invested a lot of money in doing a project without waiting to be ordered by the Regional Water Quality Board to solve a problem that had already happened. Now, I don't want to take issue with any of the work that was done. I think that we've seen more than once that Project Blueprint does good work. My concern is this, just the total price tag, and this afternoon I asked the manager to put together, a list of all of the expenses. So I forget what the number was on that, because I don't have that one open right now, but I took that spreadsheet, which included all of the engineering and construction costs, and I removed all of the things that were, to me, obviously engineering and construction, and left everything else, which included all of the upfront outreach, and all of the ribbon cutting ceremony lines, and I'm really concerned that the sum that's left here is $18 less than $69,000. And I just don't know what to say about that.
Let me just ask you,
I can't imagine that the board would have said, yeah, spend $70,000.
I just wanna understand better. So with the handout we got, there's invoices from Project Blueprint, which apparently add up to about 38,000. Am I right or wrong?
They do add up to
I
that,
didn't
but
have those up.
they do add up to that, but I think some of those costs are for the dedication, some are other costs, I suspect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, at page, well, I'm sorry, I have the number, there's a,
How about invoice numbers?
well, there's a page that, the title is by invoice, and it's a small spreadsheet, it's got, four lines under the date, and it's broken out across total invoice amount to dedication hours, the hour cost, the reimbursement out-of-pocket expense, and the amount to wet weather flow management project. And probably the two bottom line numbers there that you just referenced are the 26,042 and the 12,606.92. So that's the 38,000. If I understand that correctly, the 12,606 column is directly related to wet weather project expense, directly to the project, if I understand how that spreadsheet breaks that out.
Did you talk about the last one?
This,
The little one, yeah.
Oh, Scott, this is the thing you're talking about?
yeah, I think that's what you were referring to essentially.
So where does the 38,000 show in here? Oh, you take dedication and, okay, so the dedication, if I'm looking at here, is 26,000. The wet weather, 13,000. What's the difference? I mean, what was the money for the wet weather? What was that for?
For public information while the project was being developed, while the project was being executed.
Public information.
And
Yeah.
that, you know, where you might be going with this is exactly why I did what I did, which is eliminate only the engineering construction costs to avoid getting into the issue of, well, that wasn't the dedication ceremony expense, that was outreach, you know, I just wanted to lump all of the publicity stuff together, whether it was ribbon cutting related or not, that's the $600,000.
So are you including the 12,606 in that? The public information during the, prior to and during the construction?
Almost certainly.
Okay, so on that amount, we had information going forward about the activities that were being undertaken on behalf of the agency for the project public information. I mean, it's not like we didn't see the banners, we asked for them. So I don't know that lumping is, I think we need to get in and slice that up a little bit, because that's something that's not news.
Well, let me just throw a concept out there. Again, I'm somewhat newer here than all you are, but when you all were talking about the wet weather, the upcoming dedication, all that, and ribbon cutting and so forth, and I saw, you know, the website and banners and so forth, I guess in my head, if you would have asked me, gee, how much money is getting spent on this, I would have thrown out a figure like $5,000 or $10,000. That just would have been off the top of my head. I mean, I've seen ribbon cuttings get done for $1,000 or $2,000, you know, a little coffee, a ribbon, and, you know, boom. I guess, no matter how you slice it, whether it's 25, 26,000, or 38, or 60,000, I guess just at the end of the day, it just seems like this is excessive. I don't know how else to describe it. And I guess what I'm looking for is that not so much in the past, but going forward, that we have communication, so if there's a plan to dedicate some new pump station, we kind of talk about and say, gee, what would be a good sum of money to put towards that? And then we could say, oh, I don't know, if we limited it to say 5,000, I'd be happy with that. And from a GM standpoint, you've kind of got some guidelines, and you could say, oh, there's no way I can do it for 5, it's gonna take 8. Oh, okay, fine, we can go with 8,000. But to find out later that something gets into, and again, that's just where it gets tricky, is it 25, is it 38, is it 60? Even at 25, I just have to feel this is excessive. So that's point number one. Point number two is we have to find some way to have better controls of how we spend money for non-standard things. Now, if you've got lab analysis and you've got to pay the hourly people, that's pretty cut and dry kind of stuff. But it's the one-time things, ribbon cutting, dedication, whatever it is, we probably should have a staff report saying, gee, this is what's gonna happen, this is my view of helping to brand SAM and so forth, and the new facility. I think we should spend X. And I think we could have a shot at that and say, fine, not to exceed whatever. But like I said, you know, point number one is I think the amount, no matter how you slice it, was too much. Secondly, going forward, I'd like to know that we've got something in the process that's not gonna let this happen again.
So are you asking for a future agenda item to look at that process? How urgent is that? It looks like we may be spending a lot of time on budget stuff the next month or two.
Well, later tonight, we're gonna get into some other non-plant kind of numbers. And again, what I'm looking for, you know, as a director with fiduciary responsibilities, is clear-cut reports that aren't 200 pages long, and that simply break out a projection, whether it's something that's gonna happen, or maybe it did happen, but we have a good view of how we're spending our money. And I have to say, that's the one thing in.
Now we're spending our ratepayers' money.
Well, when I say our, because I mean, I pay sewer fees too. I just like to see more clear-cut documents that break out where our money's going. I'm not interested in do the pencil cost a nickel or a dime, but I'm interested if we're gonna spend 25, 30, 60,000. I'd like to see that brought forward, discussion and so forth. And the same thing with things that are ongoing. And I will talk later with some of these things, but I have concerns if we're spending money appropriately. That's my biggest concern. So yes, I'd like to see us agendize that for the future to talk about how we plan for these and how we control these kind of items.
So let's fit that in on an agenda where it doesn't look like we otherwise have a long meeting.
Okay.
Sometime over the next few months. Any further on this item? I have one remark that I want to make, which is.
I have a speaker slip in.
Okay, and
Really?
There, Steve has them.
Susan? Susan?
There's
Yeah.
2 of them.
There's two of them, Susan and Catherine.
The one comment I would make is that there have been some people in the community, I believe all residents of Catherine Bay, interestingly enough, who have slammed the agency and Renata for the project location. There is no other place that project could have been done because the storage facility there fills by gravity, it drains by gravity. There is literally not any other possible location that could have been built. The time when it's most needed is also the time when it's most likely the power is gonna be out. So, this was a really slick project to do.
okay, I'll after that.
Susan Sang.
Good evening, directors. I just wanted to be here tonight to answer your questions about what was deemed a successful event on a number of accounts, and just get some accurate information out there as to maybe answer some of the questions that have just risen. When you talk about an event like this, it's a strategic event, and in the way that we and I, go about these type of events, community events, is more in the experiential marketing approach, which if you were to define it properly, is the goal of experiential marketing is to build closer ties with consumers, constituents, ratepayers, and such that can't typically be forged through advertising, other traditional tactics like coupons, premiums, promotionals, and that type of thing. We specifically brought people closer to the wet weather basin on the property so that they could experience. We were very intentional in the direction, the promotional or the postcard invitation that was produced, and I'm calling attention to that because every single piece of information we put out there had an educational component to it. So when you talk about reach and the amount of money, dollars spent on this event, you have to talk about reach. And by that I mean 2 print ads appeared in the paper specifically about this event and the detail about what it meant and the benefits to the community. There were 5 online articles that appeared in the Half Moon Bay Patch, and we can call the review because according to them, their minimum impressions guaranteed is 10,000 people. So if you start adding up the numbers here, it's getting pretty big. This article, the online article, also appeared in the Pacifica Patch, so we have to add that into how many page views both Half Moon Bay Patch and the Pacifica Patch have, and that totals about 101,000 views on this particular dedication. We also did 2 evites. We issued, first one was issued to an extensive email list. The second was a courtesy reminder, and then we had the direct mail piece that backed it up. So in total, theoretically, we reached over 145,000 people with just the efforts we did. When you break it down into the cost of this event, and I'm making a correction here to the erroneous information that was out there, when you divide that into the cost of the event, it actually costs $4.86 per person. Okay, when you look at the fact that we delivered a lot of education, not only to the people who attended, but also to the people who saw what we put out there, including articles written by our local newspapers. I think that's really important to highlight. The second thing is the response rate. From just the postcard itself, 265 names on that list. We had nearly 100 registrants. That is clearly a high level of interest in this project and a high level of interest in knowing what we were doing and actually attending. We had attendees from Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. We had colleagues, your wastewater colleagues from Daly City. They were coming from everywhere to see what you were doing. We had folks who were formerly on this project who came to experience and feel the fulfillment and achievement of what had been done here 10 years in the making. So when you talk about the value, just that alone on that day and what was generated around it has a tremendous amount of value, notwithstanding the fact that Paul Perkovic was in attendance and able to see for himself and have the feeling of having his sense of accomplishment and achievement. I thought was incredibly important. The other things that we really worked hard on, I work in a way that is not only consultant, because I bring a lot of experience to this, but also in a tactical project management, sort of a hybrid where we do the work because we're able to control the expenses and just our time in that manner, and that was really important. So we looked at ways that we could really cut costs, and that meant, what could we use in the future, what could be, what is a one-time expense, and then just, what if we had gone with a traditional audiovisual company? The number came in just as an estimate. To do what we did out there with a traditional audiovisual company would have cost $1,300. We did it for $175, and we employed somebody locally. So again, 87% of the money went back into the community by actually hiring them as vendors, and I think that's a really important number too. So that was just one of the things I wanted to just get out there and make sure that people understood. The other expense that we were accommodating for was rain. It was an expense, and that number out there is a little over $1,000 in order to tent and set up safety materials on the ground, tarp, whatnot, in order to have an enjoyable experience for attendees. So I just wanted to make sure that some of the other detailed information got out there and be available to answer any questions. It was a pleasure to work on this event, and I truly believe in what was done, and having been a part of this community for so long, I'm thrilled that the wet weather basin has been installed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine,
Thank you.
and I assume you want to speak at tonight's meeting because it says 127.
Oh, I have no idea what the day is. I have such a nasty cold. I'm lucky I knew it was January. First, I want to thank Councilman Kowalczyk for putting this agenda item on. I think it highlights what a good job Steve is doing in bringing this district, in this agency, further into the future. We haven't had a lobbying effort. We haven't had much in the way of PR. We did have a newsletter. I think this actually got more attention for the district than the newsletter. I know the banners were seen by virtually everyone in Moss Beach, Montera, and El Granada, and probably even a few of the folks who got lost from Half Moon Bay and wandered north. Oh wait, they would have gone through past it to get to Sam's in the vicinity. So there were some folks from Half Moon Bay who saw it. A little bit of history. This project saved about $10 million. It was part of an overall project that came as a result of peer review when Chris Tholog was on the SAM board, because Carollo had said the only way the improved SAM plant would be able to utilize all of its capacity was if we replaced the intertie pipeline system, and that was in before 2000. It was going to be about $10 million.
So 98, 99.
And that was $10 million
In
98.
those days. So we have, this was not only a fabulous lobbying and advertising opportunity for, as Steve said, something that most people don't pay attention to, but it was accumulation of saving multiple millions of dollars. And the other is that I'm really curious when people are complaining that this is too much. Compared to what? Compared to what? I was on the advertising board for the local McDonald's co-op. This was a while back. And I know what it costs to bring in outside agencies to do this kind of thing. What Susan gave you was absolutely how advertising is measured. It's measured on a per view basis. And we used to be outraged at $2 and $3 and $4 million for an advertising campaign. And that didn't count the discounts on the sandwiches that we also, as operators, had to absorb. But then the advertising company would come back, and so would the PR agency, come back and say, this is how many people saw it, this is what they thought of it, this is a positive impression. So I am very supportive of this. I hope that Sam will, in its upcoming budget considerations, actually consider more on lobbying, because we spent a whole heck of a lot of money and time and effort and heartache trying to get grants and loans to do our recycled water project. And it amounted to nothing. Now, it was a good effort. I'm glad we did it. It gave us good press. We were trying to act partly in goodwill towards the initiative that had been in Half Moon Bay's city election to support using recycled water. So Montera and Granada thought, gee, that's a great idea. But we couldn't get the grants and the loans to do it. Maybe this will be a good kickoff for getting those to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And I would note,
I'm just curious, I mean, having heard the full presentation, I guess some of this question's been answered, but I really anticipated that the full cost of the outreach would be borne by the participating member agencies and not the agency as a whole. I guess, I think we would have done well to have discussed moving from the participating members to the full agency. And I see the rationale, and I think after the fact I support it. But as Dr. Alfano mentioned, I think we would have had a lot of that support if we had the discussion beforehand. So just going forward, I think I'd be up for let's talk it out, because I think we'll have the same kind of support. In terms of, I just gotta rehash. We spent 10 years trying to get this project done, and the way that we finally got it done was so extraordinary, so exemplary. I couldn't have picked a better project to put in front of the regulators and the people who might support our grant applications. And just going through, looking once again, not just attention from some of the legislators who can help us get grant funding, but they went to the trouble to get us resolutions passed, and to have someone personally bring the certificates. And this is the kind of thing that gets some attachment from the people who do this. And in terms of long-term building support towards the kind of projects, we demonstrated that we knew how to get something done self-started, low cost, very quickly, designed from the get-go to be done. And what other project can you think of similar magnitude that gets funding approved in April or May and groundbreaking in the fall? I mean, complete with environmentals, geotech, all the other kind of things that had to go into that, with the in the permitting process, not a single letter of complaint, not a single element of complaint from the regulators and the permitters, going through not only taking care for the environmental impact, but designing the project in such a way that we could actually rightfully declare that it had a negative impact. I mean, that there was no environmental impact. That's what the negative declaration states, and we were able to assert that in no uncertain terms. And the proof is in the tasting of the pudding. You look at the Burnham Strip, and it's still the Burnham Strip. Except now it's doing even more for the community. So this is that project where I'm really grateful that we got state and local and regional and federal attention to, and I'm grateful that we did it. I think we can find even more common ground and accord through a little more discussion, but I'm very happy with the result. And compared to, I'm glad Catherine brought it up, what we've spent on trying to get grant funding for the recycled water project and a couple of other projects. Some of those we couldn't even manage to get potential participating agencies to write letters of support. And this is a complete different kind of experience where the support was tangible from all sides. So compared to that, this is, I think, outreach expense that not only seems like the right idea, but in terms of the kind of obvious measurable results, I think it measures up. And that's my 2 cents.
I want to thank Steve for the great job he did on this project. I want to thank SRT consultants, engineers, and Susan from Project Blueprint for the great job they did. And our staff, who were there out in the rain, slogging around, making this thing happen.
And a great demo.
And the great demo, right.
Through the chair.
I have a closer once.
I do have some comments. Yeah, I do have some comments, thank you. So I am, I don't want to offer any comments about the project. It seems like from start to finish, it got done faster than expected without issues, and my focus is solely on the dedication event itself, and I have no doubt that it was going to be a good event. The resources dedicated to it were top-notch resources, and I have no criticism at all for that. I have an opinion that it was wrong-sized, and so I'd like to understand. I have a few questions for the general manager. And by wrong-sized, I mean more than was excessive. So in this handout, Steve, is there an accounting of the costs for the dedication ceremony?
Yes. Every invoice behind it has a spreadsheet that goes.
I'm sorry, is there an accounting of the cost? Like what was the total cost for the dedication ceremony?
26,000.
26, and that's for everything for the coordination with Project Blueprint plus all the other ancillary expenses?
That's right, yes.
Okay, got it, thank you. And what budget did you set for the event?
I didn't set a budget for it.
Okay. So if it came back at $50,000, we just would find out at the end was your expectation?
Well, my original, I didn't expect it to be this high, and I didn't set a number on it, and yeah, I did not plan a number for it.
Okay, thank you. And then was the idea of pursuing a broader branding effort, were you given that direction, or
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
a branding effort?
No.
Rather than a dedication ceremony, obviously it was a bigger initiative, right?
Right.
And so was that direction you were given to take a bigger to take a bigger initiative, or your best judgment for leading SAM?
Well, excuse me. While we were putting this together, we consulted with directors about who they would like at the event, and got contact lists from them, and I think that governed my thinking to a great extent.
Okay, and then you put together a really good summary of the WWFMP Public Dedication Event Detailed Summary. Was that prepared before the event?
No.
So it was after the event?
After the event. We wouldn't have had the results
So
before the event.
in terms of this, because that scope fit the event perfectly, but it was after the fact, as opposed
It's
to
correct. It's
pre-event
retrospective,
scope.
yes.
Okay.
I think the reports from most people were that the event was quite successful.
Yeah, the event was great. So it was great. I mean my cookie was good, and I was happy to attend. I was happy to attend to show support for the project, and I attended that regard, and I appreciated the warm welcome I received as to do that, to be there from everybody. You know, even though half of them did not participate in that project, everybody was gracious, and I appreciate that very much. A couple other things. There was so there's an item in the packet where you stated there was a change of focus, and in light of that, you reallocated the cost and administrative budget to the administrative budget as a SAM event.
Mm-hmm.
And can you take me through the justification for that?
Well, first of all, when we finally accept the engineering on the project, it will be a SAM asset. Your showing up and being a part of that, it's a unifying event. It looked to me like a SAM event and not a SAM wet weather committee event. And it was a change in focus from that. That's what, at some point I said, well, if this is going to be a show of unity, then it's appropriate to have it be that show of unity in terms of celebrating it together.
My presence was worth $13,000. I'm very flattered.
No, I think it was the,
It always is.
Well,
it's, yeah, it's, you know, the different interests in this JPA are such that you wanted to be included, and that says to me it's no longer a subset of SAM, it's all of SAM. That was my thinking, that it was a yeah, that was the unifying effect, was to have all the agencies represented there.
so I don't concur with that decision. I think that is not appropriate. It was a project that Half Bay was not involved in, and we don't need to debate any more of that. I think the project went off well, and clearly you're happy with the results, and I was happy to support the event. I'm not happy to support half the cost of the event, which I consider to be excessive. And mind you, the event was great. It was a big show, but I think it was overkill. What I'm hearing is that there wasn't, the expectations for the event were not documented and communicated, which I would expect them to be. The scope came after the fact.
Excuse me,
there was
they are in the staff report, if you'd like to read it.
Can I ask the chair, going forward, to restrict the comments from the public until the public comment there?
Yeah, I would,
Public comment hasn't been closed.
public comments closed.
Thank you, sir. As I was saying, two comments. The event, I believe, wasn't scoped effectively before the event. The summary of the after the event scope was very clear, and I appreciate that. But in terms of what the boundaries were for and expectations for the event, I think they needed to be set. And to Director Alfano's comment, when we come back and talk about other one-time expenditures and initiatives, I would expect the scope to be set ahead of time. The second item is regarding budget, for whether it's going to be one-off initiatives or not, whether I think a thoughtful approach needs to be taken to budgeting. If it's not a budget, if it's so ambiguous that you can't plan it, then we need to go a step at a time so we can track the costs along the way, not get to the end and see where we're at. So I'll just share my personal thoughts and my perspective. I'm going to be frank. Clearly, some of the comments, you read a whole article that was in the paper, but some of those comments were attributed to me. And I was unhappy, and I am unhappy, because I think this is overspending our ratepayers' money, our ratepayers' dollars. I recall at a previous SAM meeting, looking at the directors that were breaking up, and I said that everyone was really excited about completing the project and planning the ribbon cutting and dedication. And I recall saying, I was the chair then, and I said, have a good one. Spend $1,000. Spend $1,500. Have a good event. And we had this little banter back and forth, and I really wanted it to be a good event, and that's important to do, to recognize that accomplishment, because any way you cut it, it was an accomplishment and worthy of recognition. I think the management of the event was done in a hands-off fashion, without clear scope or budget, and that was problematic for me. And that's my public comment to this board. I think budget and spending were just running until it was done. The scope was not aligned with what I would have expected for dedication. And certainly we didn't have any discussion as a board, set a policy or an expectation for a branding initiative. We did not get that direction. I'm left with the impression that Sam took its eye off the ball on this one. And I would expect that we would more closely follow this, follow our spending and our projects going forward. And I'm just pretty disappointed, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Let me just ask real quick. Obviously, it's much easier in retrospect to look back and decide. Steve, from your perspective, if you could do this over again, what would you have done differently?
I don't, obviously, putting in, setting a budget for it, and it was one of the things that it was, it's the old boiling the frog when you're in the midst of it and you're moving toward something. There were other things going on at the time that this was moving along in a straightforward continuum, and this was one piece of the continuum. And yeah, it's, in retrospect, it would be nice to set budgets for this and to plan it out better. I fully acknowledge that it wasn't planned out as well as I've been here for 2.5 years, and this seems to be the drawing a great deal more attention than anything else I've managed to do. And I'm normally pretty good about that stuff, and this was something that I did not put, first of all, I'm not much of a party planner, and we don't do this very often. The only comps I have, if you say $1,000, $1,500, well, the only comps that we have that approach that is, we had a budget of $10,000 a year for communications. We had a 30th anniversary party that was $12,500, and everybody had to pay their own lunch. There's, in terms of what kind of benchmarks there really aren't any. This is a one-off project in many ways. I don't know that going back and saying, what could we could have made it smaller. We could have made it. A lot's been made of the ponchos, but those ponchos. If we didn't have tents, those ponchos would all gotten given out. I think that it was ambitious, and we were trying to do a number of things to get our name out there, to get farther up the queue in terms of looking for money. We didn't go out and hire a fancy firm. We went with somebody who we have a long track record with, a successful track record with. Could I have done it better if I had a few more people in the office? Probably. There's some odds in it, but in terms of not setting bounds on it, I wouldn't have known what bounds to set. And I think that again, I think the value of it is somewhere in the future, and I think that's I can't point to that now, and I'll I think at the end of all this we'll be able to tell whether my thinking was aimed in the right direction, or there are people who derisively say cut a ribbon over a sewer, geez. Well, I think that's the point. The point is we want people to think it's important to cut ribbons over sewers. That was my point, and if I got that point across, I think that is, in my professional judgment, that helps us more with infrastructure development than just ignoring it. We could have ignored it. We could have just buried it, and I wasn't quiet or subtle about the labeling the project and branding the project while I was in process, and I thought that was pretty successful. But in terms of, I just don't have any benchmark to know what it should have cost, and in retrospect, I still don't have, what's its value, I think, is going to be the test for me, ultimately.
I agree with you. I mean, my takeaway also is that it's hard after something's been ongoing to try and rein it in sometimes. Sometimes you don't even really know how big it's gotten because things get buried here and there. I agree. I think if we would have had a discussion and said, gee, what's a reasonable number for for an event like this, then we could have, even if we weren't really 100% sure, we could have tried to set some guidelines, could have always come back and said, gee, we gotta add some more to it. But we'd all be on the same page. I think that's where this got off track.
Well, to be fair, I was in communication with 4 directors on a fairly regular basis and saying, hey, we're looking to invite this person. Can we have your list of who, and talking to their staffs about who they wanted there. So it wasn't like I disappeared for 3 months and came back with this. I mean, we were in and again, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think that, you know, setting a budget for this makes a lot of sense in retrospect, but again, a lot of it is, it's why it's so hard to do the accounting on it, because so many of the things were, you know, are linked together, and to pull them apart, I think is a difficult process, especially when that's one thing you're doing.
Through the chair, if I might. So I've been on both sides of this myself, in terms of having been the consultant who was hard at work doing what the client was asking me to do, and I was the one presenting the invoice. And I've seen in the heat of the project costs be not exactly the most important thing that's being paid attention to in the heat of the project. And, you know, as the consultant who did all the work, I'm sitting there going, but all the stuff needed to happen. If you had told me I had to do it for a fixed price below that, I would have had to tell you there's no way the project gets done that way. So I got a lot of, and I've been on the other side of it, where I'm ordering up the work and then watching the price run out. And I think we're all on the same page in terms of, let's have the discussion, set policy, so we can set some budget. I think one thing that happened here, which puts this in a slightly different light, and I think we need to put a name on it, because I see what you set out starting to do, and then clearly identifying an opportunity and running with it to turn this into more than just a ribbon cutting, and achieving a public policy goal for us, which would have gone easier if we'd all been on that page. But in terms of, if we were going to try to do lobbying, lobbyists run a couple $100,000 a year, and you gotta have one at the federal and one at the state. Oh yeah, they're not cheap. And anybody who's hired a lobbyist or paid attention to those who have knows, you know, that runs into real money. This, in terms of a lobbying budget, is minuscule and more local sized, and we don't do these kind of things very often. We don't get the opportunity to very often. And this isn't just somebody schmoozing in the halls up in Sacramento, or taking somebody out to dinner and talking their ear off, persuading them. This is really as grassroots as it gets. I mean, walking in mud. So
there were weeds under there.
Yeah. So this was kind of, in some degree, yeah, I think the cost might have been more than you anticipated, more than we might have anticipated, but it's a rare opportunity to grab the bull by the horns and go for it and get the kind of turnout that we had, and the kind of people who were there. As I was looking over the list of the attendees, and it was an extraordinary list, including a lot of locals and people from all over in various places. And it's not just that they're important people, but they're important to us because we need a relationship with them about what it is we're really doing. So when we say to them, we need your support for this project, it's not just another agency coming and saying we need a handout. It's not just another agency coming and saying we need, you know, a $1 bazillion handout. We know how to get projects done for under $1 million that people thought should have taken a lot more. I mean, you know, so it's a surprising result to some degree, but the only, you know, at the inflection point where it changed from simply a ribbon cutting to a deliberate outreach, I'm all for the branding notion, but not for the sake of branding. It's for the sake of the cooperation and support we get when it comes time to go get permits and grants. That's a completely legitimate lobbying expense. We kind of backed into it. That's where I think we got into some trouble. Honestly, I thought Montero and Granada were gonna bear the full weight of this, and I'm still willing to, for my part, go to my agency and say, I'm still willing, with the numbers that we've got, I'm still willing to put out there that I think we ought to carry it. I don't like the idea that Half Moon Bay kind of fell into this. Participation shouldn't be incidental, it should be deliberate and intentional, and I don't even like the notion of asking after the fact. So I'd like to put out there, and I think the way this is agendized, if we can get some consensus, I'd like to put out there that the committee take on the expense. And when we look at the full amount that we had budgeted, we actually, because of, we had an opportunity because we had some tremendous cost savings to come in well on the budget. So I think we've got a little room to do it well within what we had budgeted to do.
So you think we're okay with doing that without going back to the member agencies?
It's well within budget.
To pay for Half Moon Bay's share
Yeah.
of the Half Moon Bay share.
But the share that's been allocated to them, I think that's, I mean, this was, many things are up to the manager to decide how to allocate, but we can come in and refine that, and I'm suggesting that we do that. And if you guys are open to that, I'd like to put that out.
Let's hear from Director Clark.
Well, I'm sitting for Director Lohman, who was on the wet weather committee, and the full Granada board did get reports all the time on how it was going and what it was costing, and paid attention, but we had, full board had really given our two SAM members pretty much the authority to go ahead and do what they thought was right in the wet weather committee meetings. And so I think that if we really have the authority to do that here, I feel comfortable in saying that that we should authorize it.
Okay.
Actually, I'm gonna have to revise what I said. Well, let's see.
Just get it done,
Well, I'm not sure. The way this is agendized, I need to defer to you, Jim.
Whether you can reallocate the cost?
Yeah.
There's no, is there a discussion on cost in here? Break it out?
I think, the allocation was done by the manager, the general manager. I think if our presumption was that the two of us would be bearing the cost, we could ask simply that the manager
Correct his report.
shift back to the original expectation without a vote, as long as we have consensus on that.
Well, since the three of you think it's reasonable, and I can go along with that, I will make one comment though, that during the ceremony, I think when we were standing around pulling the manhole, Director Kowalczyk did make a comment. I don't remember precisely what words.
I know where you're going with this. Let's let him speak for himself. If he wants to bring that, that's fine, but let's not do that.
All right. So
it was a good comment, but it's one that should come from you, not from us.
Okay.
All right. You were expressing pleasure with the event, and which you've done tonight.
Yes.
So.
I'm talking about your comment about participation.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that's a pretty weighty comment, so we have to So if we, why don't we give direction to staff to,
I just want to make a comment that this is owned by Sam, and Sam owns this, and it benefits Half Moon Bay directly, and wet weather. It benefits, Be Clean. advertise part of SAM. I mean, I think we're making the right decision and paying for the whole thing. I agree with your recommendation for future direction. But I think that, I hope that Half Moon Bay, reconsiders the fact that we paid for this, the whole project, and Half Moon Bay benefits from it. And we're heading in a direction of consolidarity and comradeship in the board, and I hope that the three districts can continue in that direction, and board members can continue in that direction. And I think Steve has done a good job in helping us along in that direction. I just hope that we.
So, if I may,
positive.
through the chair, if I may.
I just want to make sure that
I'm finished.
So, I want to share with you, I don't know if you are aware of this, but every month I go back to a city council meeting and we give a report of the dozen or so meetings we attend, and among them is SAM. And I regularly report back that sometimes there are some challenges, and I also regularly report back that the dynamic on the board is positive and that we work well together, and I think that bodes well for our website. And I stand by that as well.
The article was good.
The article did not have any commentary about about our board, and I think we work well together, and I expect us to continue to work well together.
And I will say that with Director Polchek, Director Alfano, I think that it's pretty obvious this board is working a lot better together and a lot smoother than they had in, I'm not sure how many years.
Well, we've, a lot of effort's gone into it, and we do find our points of friction.
What?
I know.
And we've had enough collegiality of late that when we have those points of friction, I dislike them all the more, because I like how we're getting a lot of things done and working together. And glad you mentioned this.
I think it is a stand-up move, what you suggested, Scott, about the cost for the event. I think part of my reaction was being, I understand 4 directors were involved in it, totally taken by surprise when that came to our side of the table. And so I appreciate that very much.
Well, I do think we expected to carry the cost, and while I see a rationale, and I could argue it both ways. Consider this our direction to staff to allocate back to the project. Consider it wild optimism.
Wow.
That at some point, Half Moon Bay is going to say, can we retroactively participate in this project? And then it'll be right back where we started. But I just tipped our hands, so maybe that won't happen. But, I feel really grateful that we got the project done as inexpensively as we did, because for all of the, I think early on in the discussions about participation, it was a much tougher discussion because the numbers were so huge. And as we got the numbers down and actually got it done and saw that it wasn't just a pipe dream.
Yeah, somebody had to say it.
That we're arguing, the differences were over much smaller numbers. So that turns out to be a really good thing.
Great, thank you.
So let me try and wind up this agenda item.
That would be moving on, right?
I haven't really said much here. I think that the board needs to think about the fact that we didn't put limits on it. We didn't ask how much is this going to cost. And so there's kind of a problem there that I'm assuming we all learned something from. And the final thing that I want to do, I don't think this has ever publicly been shown. We were presented with a number of large size, resolutions, certificates, or whatever, and so there's copies of them in the packet. There's one from Congresswoman Jackie Spear.
Where did you put the real ones?
They're
here
next,
somewhere.
they're next to Susie's desk looking for a home and a frame. Actually, two of the certificates went directly to the member agencies with but the ones that were for Sam are in Susie's desk, and they're waiting for frames.
There was one each to GSD and WSD, and then some number of them to SAM. So we have one from Jackie Spears' office, and I think these are probably all half size.
Oh, the certificates are much larger.
So it says this is an example of smart, coordinated, and efficient engineering and government. Congratulations on completing a system that will benefit everyone on the coast by preventing wastewater overflows, improving our coastal water quality, and keeping beaches safe for recreational use. No, I'm not gonna read them all. That one I thought was well written and concise. Then there's one from Don Horsley, the supervisor for the district. One from Assemblyman Richard Gordon. And for some reason, the print keeps getting smaller here. One from Assemblyman Jerry Hill.
He had more to say, in the same size to fit it in.
Well, okay, and Senator Yee didn't have as much to say as Hill, but this is even smaller.
The reason is that's a much bigger certificate, and it gets compressed more.
So that was how many? About 5. Essentially, all of our state level officials representing this area.
To be fair,
and the supervisor.
through the chair, to be fair, the most exciting call I received was from Vice President Biden's office. So they called and said, "Hello, this is Vice President Biden's office." I thought, oh no. Anyway, they called to regret. They said the Vice President wouldn't be in the area at that time, and he would not be able to attend. But we did swing for the fences on that one.
Wow. One last comment on. I thought there was some possibility of, even though the project is completed, still getting some grant funding for it. Is that still on the plate somewhere?
SRT is still chasing that, and we're watching that with the different. The problem we're having. One of the grant funding items that's out there that looks like a perfect fit. What we're finding is it's really looking at petroleum and stormwater. We don't match up with that exactly. I mean, we have a wet weather problem, not a stormwater problem, and we have not gotten any traction with that. But I regularly receive updates on possibilities and lack of success on requesting them. But there is still a possibility that we could get post-construction grant funding. We're still looking at that.
So maybe you can waive these.
They will not just go on our wall. They will go to beneficial use.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda
Mr. Chair, if I may, I don't think there was a motion and a second on item 3C, unless I misunderstood. Was there?
Move to approve item 3C.
I can't actually remember. Do we have to report secretary?
There was no motion or.
I think you're right. So
Why don't we just do it again if it's
No,
in there?
there's a motion, I'll second.
Okay, move second, any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We're gonna assume that Director Harvey voted aye.
What was the motion?
On the consent agenda items, C and D?
3C.
Okay. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Item 6A, manager's report of EKI on WWF. EKI would be the engineering firm and WWF. What about the well management program? My laptop's probably gonna be in the way?
I think so.
thank you very much.
See if I can find the right screen on here.
That's good.
I don't think it needs to be
Well, I
that, but yeah.
got that?
Yeah,
Tony?
but see how.
What am I doing wrong here?
What you did last
See how
time?
the slide
Huh?
shows.
Remember what you did last time? You started when she started the presentation,
I closed the lid for a second, and went to sleep.
I can't even get a desktop.
Go to sleep, don't go to sleep, and close the window.
Well, I went to sleep, I closed the lid for a while, but now I closed it a second.
It's in there. It gives you time value.
Oh, no, I've got it.
Just when the power side.
Who's next?
Two items, let me do the first one first. I will be off the continent and out of the country from the 8th to from the 2nd to the 10th. So you asked me to remind people by email, but I wanted to report that I'll be on vacation beginning Saturday, and I'll be out. Well, I'm not sure that I will have any connectivity in the third world. February 2nd, I'll be back the Saturday night before the Saturday night before the budget meeting. Anyway, Jeff Tarantino has been doing the project management on the wet weather facility, and he's to report on the progress being made about controlling the infiltration.
Good evening, directors. Thanks for your time. So hopefully you can read everything. The pictures won't be as great, but I provided the presentation to Steve, and so if you want to share that with the directors, that would be great for us. So what we wanted to talk about, there was three items we wanted to talk about. Project status, where we are to date. Talk about the modified repair program that's ongoing to reduce and actually potentially eliminate the infiltration, and then the ongoing schedule. So I'm on the second page of the handout, at the top there, project status. So as you recall, and the printout is double-sided. So we've been working the project boxes, the structures themselves were installed finished installation in late October, and around that time we did notice some infiltration. Prior to that, we had done exfiltration testing, so basically filling the boxes up in the inside and making sure no water was leaking out. That performed great. Once we stopped dewatering operations and allowed the groundwater to recover on the outside, we were experiencing some infiltration, and so the contractors team went ahead and looked at it, and they determined two things. One, the sealant used on the interior, portion of it ended up being uncured, and the second thing was an inconsistent use of a sealant primer. It was a two-part system where you basically roll a primer on and then you put the sealant to basically make sure everything adheres. So those two things allow basically small spaces, but large enough for water to get through to allow water into the box.
Can you guys ever
Sure.
What was not done properly?
There's a sealant on the inside, and I'll point it out in the pictures because you can see it. There was when we joined the boxes together, there's 5 sections, and at each joint there is a little bit of a space. You can't get these things to fit up to be perfectly tight and snug. And so to fill that void, there was a sealant. It's called a Sikaflex, which is it's a urethane. It's basically intended to be a water barrier. And what happened was, if you don't mix it properly, it's a 2-part system. It actually comes in a bucket, and you're supposed to mix it for a certain amount of time. And there was occasions where it wasn't mixed for the proper amount of time. So when it was applied, it didn't fully cure and harden. So it was very soft. And actually, what we observed was when water from the outside was moving in, it actually causes some bubbles. And so that's what happened. And so, but the other part, the sealant helps it adhere to it. So because it was uncured and because there was an inconsistent use of the primer, the bubbles would kind of almost delaminate from the structure. So, okay. So the contractors team proposed a repair program. Basically, we would see, any number of leaks in the boxes. There was, 5 or 6 in row A, a dozen in row B. It was kind of an inconsistent. There wasn't like all the joints were all leaking at the same time. So what the contractor proposed was to inject the product there is called a cut pure chemical grout. Basically what it is they call it a hydrophobic polyurethane. So basically it's a product, it's a two-part product, it hits water, and it immediately cures and expands to 30 times its volume. And the intent is basically it's a water barrier, is what it is. And it's a water barrier from basically filling any voids that were behind the sealant. And so it was successful on a limited basis. And all that work, all completed at no cost to SAM, because again, the issues that were experienced were a direct result of the contractor's process and the supplier's training of the contractor's team. So it was not something that was something that SAM had to pay for. So that, going on to the next slide there on page 2, again, the repair program proceeded, had some limited success. Every leak that was repaired with the process with this cut pure, which essentially is drilling in a couple of ports around a leak and injecting this product in, stopped the leak. But because we were only doing it in localized areas, what was happening was the water essentially found the next path of least resistance, and it kept finding little leaks. And basically the contractor's team continued to work and was making progress. And to date, all the leaks that they repaired all have held. It's the continued infiltration was new spots, essentially. The water just found a new spot to go. So because they were doing it in kind of attacking on a problem by problem basis, they weren't able to really kind of get ahead of the game and really address all the weak areas, because you can't just look at these areas and say, oh yeah, there's a leak, there's a weak area there, we need to inject some grout into there and move on. They were waiting for the leaks to pop up and then address them as that happened. So as that continued forward, the contractor was continuing to evaluate their process and determining what to do next. So if we go ahead and flip to the next page, the top of page 3 there, the contractor came back and said, okay, we want to do a modified approach. We want to basically go ahead and inject grout in all the joints. Okay, we don't want to just repair each leak, because we're finding that the leaks are going to continue to pop up, and so they want to go through and systematically repair everything. The product that was proposed, it works. They proposed to use the same product, which was acceptable to the engineer. And again, we reaffirmed that all this work is being done at no cost to SAM. It is a performance issue by the contractor and his supplier. So they are they provide the modified program. It was favorably reviewed, and they began that program work last week. So at the bottom of page 3 is an illustration of what's happening. There's the top half of the page 3 shows. So the top half here, this is an illustration of a vertical joint, so basically the wall joints. And what you'll see that it says example of a drill hole on either side of the joint. The joint itself is what they call tongue and groove. So it's one side's longer than the bottom side's, and you can see where there's that space. There's a dark area where it shows where we applied the initial sealant that was causing the issue. And what they're proposing to do is essentially drill on either side. They show a drill on both sides, but that's not what happened. You'll see in the photos. They just need to pick on one side, and basically we want to fill that annular space with this chemical grout. And they basically just pump it in, and it keeps taking it until they start seeing that product come out of adjacent ports. And at the bottom, it's the same detail, it's just for the floor. And this is done on all the joints between the different boxes, both side walls, the floor, and the ceiling. So it's a complete encompassing the entire length, I'll call it, of the joint.
So these boxes are still in a test stage. They haven't been filled up with stuff yet.
No sewage has entered the product. Yeah,
we haven't had to, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, this is all. Yeah. It's all clean still.
There's no place to clean. Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a tough place to work.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
So unless there's any other questions on this detail, I'll go ahead and we can get to some of the photos. Also, I want to apologize for the quality of the photos. I was attempting to take some of these pictures in a dark space, and so some of them became a little blurry. So what I'm showing on the top of page 4, there's 2 photos. Basically, this is in one row. It's in row B, which is the row. It's basically the row A is the most westerly row, the row closest to Highway 1. This is the next row moving towards Obispo Road. And what we're trying to show here is is just the amount of moisture that's in the box, and you can actually see in the ceiling there's active water droplets, and it was very damp. This is before any of the large scale repair program was happening. So there's moisture coming in from the roof, there's moisture coming from the sides, just kind of not consistently through all the joints, but kind of spread throughout the entire product.
How much dirt is on top?
It varies between, I think it's in the shallowest it's about 2 feet, and the deepest it's about 4 to 5 feet.
I would hope the water table is below the top of it, but maybe not.
I think it's the project is designed to account for if the water table were to rise basically 2 feet above the box. That was the design criteria to make sure that there's appropriate weight and the product will perform with these repairs. We'll be able to handle that water pressure.
Now, I don't know about this particular spot, but not too far from here, within a few hundred feet of this location, I have photos from late 90s showing the water table at the surface of the land.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, that was the determination by the engineer during design that hey, that's a situation that could happen. So we need to make sure we're counting when we're designing the structural integrity of the system, just the pure integrity and hold down, that's accounted for. So that was done during the design. So moving down to the bottom of page 4, just a couple of pictures. Basically, that on the left side, the top of the 2 photos, that is the product. It's the kind of the main part of the product. The second is a smaller canister. It's only about this big. That's the activator. And what I'm showing in the next photo is basically they're taking I think that's a 3-gallon bucket, and they're adding a quart of the activator, and they basically mix it with a hand mixer. Mix it for I think it was 5 minutes, and then that product is now activated. It doesn't have a pot life, so meaning you don't have to mix it and then use it within 5 minutes. It can stand, as talking with the contractor, it's something if they use some and they come to the end of the day and they have extra product left over, they can continue to use it the next day, so we're not wasting anything, nor are we having to rush and try and inject this too quickly and cause other issues. Okay. So moving on to page 5.
I'm sorry, I'm just curious, how does it activate then?
You don't actually see it. It's a chemical reaction, and you follow the manufacturer's recommendations. It's not like there's a puff of smoke.
So you mix it, leave it there, but when you inject it, then it works?
Then it works.
Okay.
Didn't you say water activates it?
It's water. It's a two-part activation. In order to get the chemical reaction to be able to accept the water and cause it to harden in the presence of moisture, there's these two chemicals they mix together.
It activates after it leaks.
Because we have enough water behind the joints. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it does. You do need to use it in the presence of water. If we didn't have any water back there and we just injected it, this liquid would never activate. And we're going to see some photos where you actually can see it. It turns from this kind of a purplish liquid and it turns into a white foam. So that's how we know it's actually being activated. And you see it come through the pores.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So top of page 5, what I was trying to show there is the workers basically drilling holes. They're about 6 to 8 inches apart, and the picture on the left of the gentleman drilling, he's drilling in a hole, and then the picture on the right, it's hard to tell, but you can see immediately we saw water coming through that hole. So we know there's water back there, and that's actually the roof. So we do know there was water up there, and we need to address that. Going down to the bottom photos, basically the photo on the left is the 2-man team, and they use a hand pump to inject the product into the ports, and it's pumped through a tubing. And the picture on the right, you can basically see has essentially a wand. It looks kind of like if you're filling your car tire up with air. It's kind of that look to it, the tip, and you put it over this port and they inject it in. And basically what they're doing is they're watching all the other ports to see where that product starts to come out. So make sure that they're seeing it travel. And making sure they're getting good coverage. And it is kind of a look and feel. Sometimes they feel pressure build up with the gentleman pumping on it. They can feel pressure build up. That's one way they know it's working. The other part is just really looking and watching it travel through the other ports. Okay. So moving on to the top of page 6. So it's a little hard to tell, but basically what I was trying to show in these 2 photos is the ports, and you can see in the photo on the left, kind of on the left edge of the photo, you see kind of a brass fitting, which is the port, and there's some white product sticking out of it. That's the cured cut pure material. And the sealant that we were talking about earlier, kind of behind those ports, you see kind of the white grayish material. That's the sealant that didn't cure properly on the spot. So basically, we're filling in behind that product, and now you basically have a belt and suspenders happening now. You have this the original sealant, and now you have this cut pure product behind it, basically providing the barrier to the water.
So it fully cures fairly fast?
Yeah, it's basically as soon as it comes into contact with water, the chemical process happens and it starts to turn into kind of this hardened foam.
And that completes like in a few minutes?
Instantaneously is the way it was described to me. Yeah, I mean the hard part is, this is one of those neat things you would love to be able to watch and see happen, but you can't because it's happening kind of behind the structure. But and then just the other photo, just some more of those ports again adjacent to the sealant. And what the bottom of page 6, and it's a little hard to tell again, took photos from the same vantage point. The photo on the left is after the sealant had been applied, and the photo on the right is one of the first photos where we were seeing all the moisture. It was noticeable the difference between the 2 days. I was in one day to see them drilling the ports. I was in for a second day to see where they had only repaired 3 of the 5 joints, and it's noticeable. There's no more water dripping off the ceiling, no water leaking in from the sides. The product appears to be working, the process appears to be working, and the contractors continue to move forward with success.
So how are you evacuating the water that is currently getting in there?
It is basically because of the way the structure is all set up. They basically squeegee it into the drain lines that connect each of the rows, and it flows by gravity to the low point. And at the low point, we are pumping that out as the water accumulates.
And what's the warranty for this project?
It is a 1-year warranty, and part of the bond. So we'll have a maintenance bond. And a 1-year manufacturer's warranty on all the products being used.
So this product that you're putting in now is part of that 1-year warranty?
That is correct.
Okay. What's the expected lifetime of the sealant?
It is a 20-year product. Over time it may break down, but it is considered a long-term fix. This is a product that they use on older tunnels that have experienced infiltration over time, and it's something that actually the contractor that's now doing this work. This is pretty much what they do. The crew that we have out there, 2 of the 5 members have actually been working with this product and doing the work for more than 15 years.
Also, the people doing this repair they do this all the time.
They are. They're a contractor. They're a skilled contractor, not part of the manufacturer of the product, but they're somebody that uses it and uses it in numerous occasions, in numerous locations.
May I be so bold as suggest that those seals are looked at month 9, month 10, month 11, and month 12?
I think that's an excellent suggestion.
And that is exactly what the plan is. We always, when you're going into a warranty period, especially with the maintenance bond period, with any public works contract, that's always something we encourage to be done, is to look at these at a frequent basis. One, so if there are any issues, we identify it up front, get the contractor on board so he can come out here and repair it. We don't want to go out there on day 363 and see, oh my gosh, there's something we want to repair. So yeah, no, that's something that EKI will be putting reminders on our calendar and letting staff know when it's appropriate to go out there and take a look at things.
Because if it fails on day 363, then there's a new warranty or the warranty changes, correct? Or you only had two days to repair it?
Yeah, I mean, if it failed if it failed on day 363, I think they would have to repair it. And at that point, you would work something out with the contractor. I'm not sure that automatically you'd get a new 1-year warranty period, but you'd work with the contractor and come to an agreement. Yeah. So then flipping to page 7, just a quick schedule update. So basically, they're taking about 2 days to repair each box. It's getting a little bit quicker. In talking with the contractor this morning, they anticipate having all 5 rows repaired by Friday this week. There is cleanup work that does need to happen, which will take a couple of days next week. They got to go through, remove the ports, and epoxy grout those portholes in place. But we've had row A repair work was completed this past Wednesday, and so we've had basically 5 nights of exposure to water and have seen no leaks since they completed the work on repair on row A. So we're moving forward, and then once the new contractor notifies us that they've repaired all the joints, removed all the ports, and patched all those portholes, EKI and SRT will do a final walkthrough to confirm that everything is functioning as intended.
Can you let me know a few days in advance, because I'd be interested in tagging along on the walkthrough. Since I didn't remember this thing's falling out of the water.
Yeah.
I think I just, didn't say.
Yeah, it is considered a confined space by OSHA standards.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Detail.
Yeah, so.
Limited by his ankles.
Confined space and.
Confined space into.
Yeah, so it is.
If you wanna get the training, yeah, certification.
I guess Art has.
Okay.
Yep, periscope records, they'll both look at.
We'll take a lot of pictures and we'll try to take a movie on camera. We can show it to you.
I think in some cases the movie is actually easier to understand. You know, sometimes it's just hard to capture things so clearly.
Yes. Yeah, and the challenge is obviously it's dark down there, and so it's something that we'll be using flashlights and things. Right now they have temporary lights set up in the inside, but we will document and provide the information to staff.
So at the completion of this, you expect there will be zero infiltration?
Yeah, the standard that is required in the specs is basically no running water. There can be some condensation accumulating, and so it's possible you might have some, over time, some drips, some condensation applies on the water, and over several days it might drip. So the goal is to have no running water, no visible drips, no obvious damp spots where water can come in.
I didn't think that concrete was actually 100% waterproof in the first place.
It isn't, which is part of the challenge.
Okay, looks like we've already got to the bottom of the slide.
Yeah, for questions, yeah, so.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, see you later.
Appreciate that.
Okay, good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for management reports?
No, thank you.
Item 7, attorney's report.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Item 8, director's reports. I have one comment. In the check detail, I don't remember the exact amount, but there was like $4,000 or $5,000 for painting this building. Do we afford like 10-gallon can of paint on the Portola pump station? I've gotten multiple comments about how bad that building looks. It hasn't been maintained. It's in terrible shape from the street. So,
Take a look.
As we're painting the SAM buildings, can we fix up that building, which has much higher visibility than this building does? Appreciate it. Any other director's reports?
That can only be said by somebody from Montero, so it's.
That's not even funny.
Oh, that's quite all right.
I have to check, let's see, where it's 9:27, I'll have to see if that got picked up on the video. Okay, item 9, closed session, we're going into closed session for a bunch of items that are listed on the agenda. I'll order that.
Directors, before we go into closed session, has everybody signed their checks that they're gonna sign? I want to give them to Susie so she can,
After all that,
Did you?
I will if you want, but
Oh, I didn't know, mine just, they walked away.
I took them. You want me